Hello friends, it's Josh Rose here again. Today I wanted to give you a little update on the explosive arrow Deadeye. I put out a bit of a build template a few days before the league started, and of course there were some new mechanics in this build. We didn't know quite how they were going to function, and so people have been asking me how the build is going. And just wanted to give you a little update on where I'm at. So I'm level 87. I've done up to only tier 9 maps right now, so I've not been able to push the build into red maps just yet. It has handled all the content that I've been able to get to so far pretty well. Let's talk about some of the mechanics that were sort of a question mark coming into this build. So the first thing would be the Mirage Archers, the new Occupying Force node where you can have 3 Mirage Archers. The distance between the Mirage Archers is larger than I thought. I thought it was going to be a little bit smaller than it is. You can see it's a relatively large circle there. Unfortunately, Conk Effect does not help with that. I hoped that it would. So initially, I found them a bit challenging to use. What I recommend doing if you're playing this build is to make sure that you take the duration cluster that is near elemental equilibrium, and then your Mirage Archers will last about 7 seconds, and they become much more useful at that point. They will stick around for a long time, and as you're kiting and moving around, you're going to be summoning more Mirage Archers. Another thing that's cool too about the Mirage Archers is Explosive Arrow actually hits twice. It hits when the first arrow impacts, and it hits again on the explosion. So as you're clearing, a lot of times you just fire a volley into a pack and you get a Mirage Archer, and as you're running, you get another one when the explosion goes off, which is a nice way to just get extra Mirage Archers as you're zooming around the map. So ultimately, the Mirage Archers are pretty cool. I think they help a lot in rituals. I think they're nice for clearing. They definitely help you get more stacks on bosses, but you do need some duration to make them worthwhile. I think 4 seconds is just too short. And you can see with a dash and a second wind that we're zipping around very fast, so it's really quite easy to continue putting up Mirage Archers. And you don't have to think about it. It's just going to happen because you're going to be zipping around and dodging all over the place. So I find them useful, and they have been helpful. Take some duration. Now you can also get a Divergent Mirage Archer gem that will give you 20% increased skill effect duration for the entire skill, for your whole explosive arrow skill. So that can be useful, and that can save you a point maybe in that duration cluster. I wouldn't use a duration gem. Don't think that's necessary. The duration also helps with the damage of your explosive arrow because the fuse lasts longer, allowing you to stack more fuses. So you just kind of want to balance that with your attack speed and your Mirage Archer's attack speed to get to the point where you can stack 20 arrows, on a single target. In terms of dealing with the ritual mechanic, now in some ways there's some very good things about the build, and then there's some things about the build that don't work so well in ritual. Primarily far shot. So I did not anticipate these enemies being so fast and so large in numbers a lot of the time that you're just going to be constantly swarmed by enemies. So it's very hard to use far shot when you're doing rituals. The good news is that in terms of defenses, the build has felt better than anticipated. I thought it would be pretty good, but it's felt really tanky. Just have not had many problems, and I spent most of my time with this build in maps running around at like 4,400 HP or something. Just recently bought a Calm's Heart, and now I'm at like 57 or something like that. But the build does not die off, and it doesn't take a whole lot of damage. You can see the Gale Force charges up there. They build up very quickly. When you lose them, they mitigate a large amount of damage from a hit, and you get them right back. Combined with all the dodge and evasion and that sort of thing, it's been very tanky. And so I think overall it's done well in rituals themselves. And Explosive Arrow is a nice skill for rituals too, because they have a very small arena, which means you can stick arrows into the side of the arena and overlap lots and lots of explosions on enemies. Up into tier 8, tier 9, it's been doing fine. How's it going to do in tier 16? I don't know yet. There's a lot of room still for the build to scale. I'm at something like 2.2 mil DPS on like a single target 20 arrow explosion. And when it comes to single target, I think we can look at a Maven clip here where we're fighting 3 bosses. These are like mid-tier bosses, not red map bosses. But the single target's pretty good. You can swap out of your GMP. Now I'm just using faster attacks instead of GMP, which is not ideal. I haven't bought a second bow or anything at this point, which you probably should do. But one volley of arrows will generally finish off these bosses pretty well, especially if you crit, because if your first arrow crits, if the fuse crits, then the explosion will crit and you'll do a couple million DPS and take down these bosses relatively easily. I think that damage is going to hold up just fine on high tier enemies in single target situations. So I think it's working well as a league starter. It clears maps very quickly. It's very tanky. You can get a couple million DPS on just a couple of exalts. You'll be able to start filling out your Atlas very quickly. It's very good in the Maven arena, and it's just a good boss fighter overall because the single target DPS is good. And with all the evasion and damage reduction you have, if you're not getting hit a lot, then you're not going to die. And so I don't think I've died against any bosses yet because they just can't hit you multiple times in a row, and then you get your wind ward back up and all that kind of stuff. The big challenge for this build, I think, is going to be trying to do like high red tier map rituals with a lot of dangerous mod rolls. Those are going to get a bit scary. So we'll have to see, push the build a little bit harder, take it into more difficult maps and see how it goes. But as a league starter, it's working well. I'm just going to show you my path of building real quick. Okay, here's where the build's at right now. This is sort of best case scenario damage where you've got your curse up, you've got your Scorching Ray totem down, you're at a good distance from the enemy to maximize your far shot and arcing shots bonuses. And then you can get pretty big explosions, 2.6 mil damage, something like that. Make sure you take these duration nodes at least early on when you don't have other duration like a Divergent Mirage Archer or something like that. It'll help your Mirage Archers stay up longer. It'll make your fuse last longer so you can stack more arrows and get closer to this 20 fuse type of damage. And the build also, I neglected to mention that it's been a lot more mana hungry than I anticipated. So I've been using these mana leech nodes over here and they help a lot. At some point you can get Fuel the Fight and might be able to replace these nodes now. I haven't tried yet, but that's something worth mentioning. It eats a lot of mana, especially if you miss a few shots, then you're going to be running low. So that's worth keeping in mind. I would definitely take those early on. So it's not a complete build at this point, but this is where I'm at a couple days into the league and it's been going well. So if you've tried the build, let me know what you thought. If you're having trouble, ask questions. And if you like the content, subscribe because I'm going to be starting on a new build soon and I'll have some videos out for that one as well. So thank you for watching. See you later.